When you don't have to be part of the struggle, you don't truly appreciate what you have.
I've had immense adversity in my life. My mother was in a car wreck when I was still in the womb, and as a result, I was born clinically deaf. I overcame obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. Ironically, I had to do the same as a female athlete just to get the opportunity to compete. My name is Chessa Boucher, and I was born and raised in Bossier City, Louisiana. I was a tomboy growing up and played every sport with the boys. But all it took was one shot and I was hooked. Basketball was my first love. I was the first 7th grader to play high school varsity basketball at Evangel Christian Academy. I was bullied and even had my life threatened after a game because I was the highest scorer. My life as a female basketball star was difficult. As a former college athlete, I wondered what other female athletes have been through in their sports careers. But in order to understand what female athletes have overcome, we need to understand the past. Over the past 4 decades, the state of Louisiana has seen significant changes in women's collegiate athletics. Women weren't always given the chance to be part of athletics, but Title IX changed the face of women's sports in Louisiana's colleges and universities.
We were just happy to have opportunity then. You didn't have teams, you didn't have budgets, you drove your own car to events, you didn't have what we have today. So the evolution has been amazing.
I really do think it's a great thing because it gives women representation in athletics.
It was only 42 years ago when President Richard Nixon signed into law the Title IX of the Higher Education Amendment Act of 1972.
And while most people think that Title IX just affected athletics, that's not what it was about at all. It was about sex discrimination in education as a whole.
The Title IX amendment favors equality in athletics for all athletes. At Louisiana State University, athletics have reached remarkable success with talented athletes and coaches. LSU Athletics has a total of 46 national team championships and is ranked 7th highest in total NCAA championships. In 2014, LSU fields teams in 21 varsity sports, 9 men's teams, and 12 women's teams. That may seem unfair with 3 more women's teams, but the misconception of Title IX is having the same number of teams for men's and women's sports. The essence of Title IX is having the same number of women athletes as men athletes. However, it is challenging, and Mark Grant, one of CBS Sports TV directors, explains why.
Because football has so many athletes on scholarship that they have to have other sports for women to kind of make up for the 90 scholarships that football can get to kind of level the playing field.
There were pioneers for women's athletics who helped bring Title IX to the forefront. But at the same time, there were others who felt the adverse effects of the amendment. In 1990, Derek Jacobs earned a basketball scholarship to Centenary College of Louisiana in Shreveport, but during his sophomore year, Title IX directly affected him.
They pulled half of a scholarship from me to pay for one of the girls that played soccer. The type of person I am, I wanted to go out and watch and see where my half of scholarship went.
After seeing firsthand what Title IX can do for female counterparts, Jacobs became an advocate for equality in athletics.
I lived it, but you got to understand, y'all deserve the same thing that men do.
In May of 1995, Jacobs began his coaching career at Southfield Private School, and he's coaching girls basketball. He believes girls play with a different passion than guys because of Title IX.
I don't care if you're 18, I don't care if you're 25. You've heard that Title IX in your life, that you are only here because of Title IX. So they go out with something to prove every single day. Even with the tremendous athletic success at LSU, equality in athletics hasn't always been so equal. LSU's head gymnastics coach Dee Dee Bro knows all too well about the history of women's athletics here in Baton Rouge. In 1978, Coach Bro started her coaching career at LSU,
and was recently named 2014 National Coach of the Year after her Tigers finished a historic gymnastics season. Despite all the success that Coach Bro has had over her 37 years at LSU, she never imagined the battles she would have to face even after Title IX was enacted.
The opportunities were so few and so far between, and there were some great women in the history of women's athletics that really kind of took the bull by the horns and beat that drum.
Pat Newman was one of them. As an LSU administrator and tennis coach, she was one of the loudest drummers for women's athletics at a time when Title IX was still in its infancy.
There was really no money. All of the women's teams bought their own outfits, their own whatever they needed, rackets or balls.
During Newman and Bro's time at LSU, Chancellor Paul Murrell and Athletic Director Carl Maddox understood what Title IX could do for LSU, and over a 6-year time period added 5 women's club sports. From 1969 to 1975, LSU added tennis, gymnastics, basketball, volleyball, and swimming. But even with these new additions, female athletes saw little improvements.
There were no dressing rooms, and the practice facilities stayed the same way for a long time.
Even with bleak facilities for her team, Coach Newman said that LSU football was more than supportive of women's athletics, but other sports weren't as receptive.
Some of the other sports, yes, they felt very threatened. Football, they were right there. They were always in the stands.
Even with the support of LSU football, some of the athletic administrators were reluctant to change with the times. Coach Bro felt as if Joe Dean had another agenda once he became athletic director.
He personally decided to take LSU from moving forward in women's athletics and adhering to Title IX and took it back to a dinosaur time.
Joe Dean led LSU athletics from 1987 to 2000 and was a huge advocate for football and men's basketball. As a result, in 1994, 3 female undergraduate students filed suit against LSU, stating that the university violated Title IX. The Pedersen versus LSU case claimed that the university failed to add a varsity women's soccer program, which was in violation of Title IX's equal accommodation provisions. Coach Bro believes that former AD Joe Dean played a major role in the Title IX lawsuit.
His negative attitude and his chauvinistic attitude towards women's athletics that I think ultimately and did indeed cause a lawsuit. And LSU, the lawsuit that LSU did lose. There were a lot of years, 14 years, about 6 months and 3 days, that was a bitter struggle every day. Come to work, it was a bitter struggle, and it was bad leadership.
Prior to the Pedersen versus LSU lawsuit, LSU's athletic administration decided to cut certain athletic programs in order to reduce athletic budgets. The athletic programs that were in question consisted of men's and women's gymnastics, wrestling, and softball. But Coach Newman believed that LSU athletics would suffer if women's gymnastics were eliminated.
I went to bat for gymnastics. I could understand cutting softball, but we were not going to cut the one sport that I thought epitomized everything that we stood for.
Coach Newman explained how women's gymnastics was the only sport to have other SEC teams to compete against, so travel wasn't as costly for the university. Coach Newman saved women's gymnastics at LSU. However, she wasn't as victorious with keeping her job.
She kind of went toe-to-toe with some of the good old boys, and at that point, she lost her job and her long-standing reputation here at LSU.
In contrast to the LSU Title IX saga, Louisiana Tech had males who believed women's athletics would be a viable asset to the university. La Tech began taking steps forward in 1974 when President F.J. Taylor established the first women's athletic program in Ruston, Louisiana.
He had a vision that women's sports could be good, not just have it to be having it.
President Taylor hired Ruston High School PE teacher Sonia Hogue as the first women's head basketball coach at Louisiana Tech, even though she had no prior coaching experience. Coach Hogue knew it would be challenging to start a program on her own, so after a few years of trying, she approached her good friend and former co-worker, Leon Barmore.
She came to me, and I remember sitting in my office at Ruston High School ordering water bottles, jump ropes, basketballs, all those things to start from scratch a women's basketball team.
At the age of 6, Barmore knew he wanted to be a basketball coach. However, he didn't quite envision what was to come.
I wanted to be a college coach. I wanted to be a Louisiana Tech men's coach is what my goal was.
Even though he always knew he wanted to coach, Barmore never imagined coaching women, but he is one of the winningest coaches for women's basketball. In 1978, Coach Barmore began his women's basketball coaching career for the Lady Texters. From 82 to 85, Coach Hogue and Coach Barmore shared the title of co-head coaches and won the last AIAW National Championship in 1981 and the first NCAA National Championship in 1982. A year later, in 83, the Louisiana Tech men's coaching job was up for grabs, and Coach Barmore applied for the job. Despite that the Lady Texters brought home their second national title, Dr. Taylor knew Barmore was the best fit for their women's program.
Dr. Taylor told me, he said, you know what, you could be a great coach for us in men, but we need you in the women. And to be honest with you, by that time I had fallen in love with women's basketball.
And as a result, in 85, Coach Hogue stepped down and left the reins to Coach Barmore.
We had girls that could really play. And when you went out to coach them every day, they played hard, they listened, they were coachable. It was fun. We were winning and I was enjoying it, so I didn't jump, and I'm glad I didn't.
Coach Barmore believes the success of the Lady Texters started with President Taylor realizing how invaluable women's athletics would be for the university.
We did it right here at Louisiana Tech, and the thing that I saw in those girls, yes, you bet you, they had an opportunity they never had before.
With the help of Title IX, Louisiana Tech gave female athletes more opportunities to earn a college degree and compete at the highest level of competition. Coach Barmore's Lady Texters took advantage of the opportunity and brought home 3 national championships. The trophies reside in a glass case at the Thomas Assembly Center for everyone to see how a program from small-town Ruston, Louisiana became a national powerhouse in women's college basketball. LSU fought against the athletic administration to succeed, yet another fight remains the stereotypes associated with female athletes. Shelley McMillan is a rarity in the sports world. It's not every day that you see a woman coaching both men's and women's soccer teams.
I'll go coach a game, and I no longer think about the fact that I'm a woman. I'm about to coach an intense playoff game, and everybody else on the field are men. The players, the coaches, the athletic trainers, everyone are men.
Coach McMillan is breaking down the stereotypes. She's the head boys and girls coach at Calvary Baptist Academy in Shreveport, Louisiana. But for Coach McMillan, it isn't anything new to be the only female on the soccer field. Up until her college career, McMillan was the only girl playing on an all-boys team.
I was really well accepted. I mean, I grew up kind of a tomboy, but the guys really kind of protected me, and I played and started, and so that was kind of a, I don't know if that built a little bit of respect.
In 1993, McMillan earned a BS in exercise science from Centenary College in Shreveport. During her time there, she captained the inaugural women's soccer program, and in her first game, she scored the first goal in the history of Centenary's program. Her senior season, McMillan received the NCAA Centenary College Female Athlete of the Year and has excelled as a coach. Despite 21 years of coaching experience and all of Coach McMillan's success, she still battles the barrier of a female coach coaching in a male-dominant sport.
Male coaches walking over to my side and going, hey, could you tell me where your head coach is? And are you the athletic trainer? Or hey, are you the faculty person? And I love it because I can go, oh, I'm the coach. It's so nice to meet you. And them walking back over to the other side and going, all right, guys, we've got this one. And, us beating them. I constantly, for 21 years of coaching high school soccer.
Coach McMillan knows a lot about winning, and she holds the title of Louisiana's all-time winningest high school soccer coach with well over 600 wins. Needless to say, Coach McMillan has put her stamp on men's and women's high school soccer throughout the state of Louisiana, but she hopes she did more than just win.
I've wanted to change that stigma, and I've wanted to gain that respect for men to say, hey, don't disregard women coaches over the next 50 years. Don't disregard female athletes over the next 50 years, because I know a lot of girls that can compete just as well as guys that I've coached.
There are women like Coach McMillan who are breaking the mold in the sports world, yet the stereotypes still linger. When I asked Coach Jacobs if he thought women athletes were stereotyped.
Oh my God. Yeah, they're stereotyped pretty bad. I mean, it's you know, they're big, they're butchy.
Even when I went to college, you know, the sorority girls wouldn't talk to us because we were big and bad and mean people, apparently.
As a female athlete, most women have been called a jock or a tomboy at some point in time. Mo Isom was successful on the soccer field, but trying out as a place kicker for the LSU Tigers isn't something you often see.
People want to put something in a box. So people either want to see the extreme of one that they can always classify as a butch, athletic, you know, rough and tumble woman, or they want to put in the box of a girly girl, and therefore when she steps on the field or on the court, she's probably, you know, she's still a girly girl.
Ironically, when talking about stereotypes of female athletes, 3 names were mentioned every time: Lolo Jones, Danica Patrick, and Brittany Griner. Lolo Jones is an Olympic hurdler and former LSU track star. Jones was very successful at LSU, but her beauty is mentioned more than her athletic achievements. The same with race car driver Danica Patrick, who dropped out of high school in order to pursue racing. Patrick was the 4th woman to race in the Indianapolis 500 and placed 4th, which is the highest ever for a female driver.
We look at women for their beauty more than their brawn and more their ability. We just look at how pretty they are.
Former Baylor star and now WNBA player Brittany Griner has seen her fair share of success. However, her sexual orientation has been the subject of much press. After being the first overall draft pick in the 2013 WNBA by the Phoenix Mercury, Griner openly came out to the public.
Generally speaking, there's probably more gay athletes in women's sports than there are in men's sports, at least that are out openly gay. I think that it's very common to see WNBA players that have female lovers, but you don't see that so much in the men's sports.
In 2014, the WNBA has made an effort to embrace the LGBT community. Griner is at the forefront of the campaign and hopes to combat homophobia. But it's not just in the WNBA. Athletes in other major league sports have recently come out as well, including Jason Collins in the NBA, Michael Sam in the NFL, and Robbie Rogers in the MLS. Typically, athletics are associated with masculinity because men establish sports, so trying to break away from the masculine stereotype is a battle in itself.
I think when it's categorized as a man's sport, that kind of goes into the stereotype of you have to be a lesbian.
I've dealt with people who think that, you know, girls that play sports only like other girls.
I mean, even for the men's side, like, you don't have gay men on the basketball team. That's to say, like, it might be the complete opposite because everyone assumes you're lesbian. So it's a shocker if you're straight. So on the men's side, it's completely different. But I think, like, once everything's not stereotyped and equally put together, then everyone will embrace it.
Stereotypes and sexual orientation appear in all sports, but Coach McMillan feels gender roles are irrelevant in athletics.
And it really shouldn't be. It is, but it shouldn't be about sex.
Emily Ziering played volleyball at Penn State and now coaches. She's been stereotyped simply because of what she was wearing.
They could be doing it because they think I'm someone super important because I'm wearing like an LSU t-shirt and I'm tall, you know, and so they're like, oh my God, that's got to be a famous LSU athlete, and I'm not.
Specifically for female athletes, the persona you have on the field can sometimes follow you off the field.
Because we are expected to be these graceful, loving, nurturing individuals, when you're a beast on the field and competitive and cutthroat and give it everything you have, it can almost like catch people off guard.
Female athletes have battled for opportunities to compete with the help of Title IX. So what will help them fight stereotypes now?
We're stereotyped, but then people love when we break it. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it's a lot of motivation for women in sports, especially if they don't fit the mold.
LSU senior gymnast Sari Morrison knows all about not fitting the mold. Morrison has experienced an unusual stereotype because she isn't the typical height of a gymnast. Standing at 5'9", Morrison is the tallest gymnast in the country.
My fans come to me with and say that I inspire them because it's so hard for a tall gymnast to actually be able to continue throughout their whole career and actually do something really amazing with it.
In competitions, gymnasts wear flashy leotards and bows along with full makeup. Morrison wouldn't have it any other way because she thinks it helps when competing in meets.
I actually really love that about the sport, is that I can embrace my feminine side while doing what I love.
The media can play a role in how college athletes are perceived.
And so when you think of those sports, you automatically think the ones that are televised the most often, the ones that, just get the most attention, media coverage, is the men's sport.
No one knows the power of the media better than Mo Isom. As a freshman in her second collegiate career start, she scored a 90-yard goal against Brigham Young University. Not to mention, she was the first goalie in LSU's history to score a goal. Isom is often recognized from her YouTube videos, and the media helped make her an internet sensation. But despite her fame, she was even more successful on the field. But during her junior year, she realized her athletic collegiate career would soon be over. All college athletes are given 5 years of eligibility, so the athlete can redshirt or have an extra year of eligibility if he or she is injured. In Isom's case, she already played 3 years of soccer and had her senior year remaining. In return, she had 1 year left of collegiate athletic eligibility, which she could compete in any sport other than soccer. So Isom decided on something a bit out of the norm.
I realized I was recruited for my leg in soccer, so could my leg be a powerful asset for the football team as well?
Isom felt as though her strong leg could earn herself a spot on the LSU football team as a place kicker. Isom reached out to some of her friends on the football team, and she was very surprised at their reaction.
They were so excited. They were like, yeah, do it, like, go for it. It sort of made it really real that they were behind it.
Isom approached head coach Les Miles to talk about trying out as a kicker for the Tigers, and his response was unexpected.
And he was like, go for it. And that was radical to me because I really expected a lot more closed doors than I got.
She trained privately for a year and kept it hidden from the media because she didn't want the media attention. However, it was only a matter of time until she was caught.
The media built this story up like, she's about to try out, here it is.
Isom's tryout process consisted of 2 tryouts, but after the first one, the media had already come to a conclusion.
And when there wasn't a definite answer after that, the media fails to make the team first time, but is determined to come back and try out again.
Isom says that the media doesn't always take a straightforward approach.
Media takes things every kind of direction. So through that process, just really knew there was a lot out of my control. My pursuit of football was never a woman's crusade. It was never about male-female. Yet it became about female in the media.
Isom wholeheartedly pursued the improbable task of being the first female to make the LSU football team with hopes of reaching her goal.
If I had known at the beginning there's a greater percentage for a no than a yes, I never would have taken the step of faith to complete the journey.
There's some things that she can't do, and she knows it. We go to kicking off, the way we kick it off into the corner, we count on our kicker to make some tackles, and it's just not something that I'm comfortable that she's ready to do. I think she understood.
So it was a hard no in the end, but it was worth it. It was definitely worth it.
Mo Isom strived to reach, perhaps, an unattainable goal, which few women have tried. While many are pushing athletic boundaries, it appears equality of media coverage means one thing.
It's all get around the money. So Title IX is just, it's mirrors. It's a way to get around things to make y'all feel somewhat better, but in reality, that's not the truth.
Let's be honest, women's soccer is not bringing in millions of dollars. So the reality is, you're not going to have the same amount of people in the stands watching the sport. You're not necessarily going to be broadcast every weekend when you have a game on TV, and you're not going to have as nice locker rooms because you're not bringing in the millions of dollars that are funding this.
In 2011, over $320 million were generated by college athletics in the United States. Even with the evolution of women's sports through the past decades, media coverage has been slow to change.
Do I think that viewership for female sports versus male sports, is it all equal? Absolutely not. You have individuals, you have a stud like Brittany Griner, yet the WNBA can hardly keep people in their seats as a whole.
Coach Bro believes that media coverage is somewhat in proportion to how well a team performs. But for men's athletics, there are a few exceptions.
I think that there are some men's sports that could rear up and roll over backwards, and they would get a tremendous amount of media coverage.
However, Coach Bro thinks it's different from women's athletics.
Women's sports, for some reason, they have to do just over the top well, or just be so bad, doing things so poorly and be bad in the news that they're going to be news.
That goes back to that famous statement. The athletes, they sell the tickets.
And there are more seats to fill now for LSU athletics. In 2013, LSU added sand volleyball as another sport for females to compete in.
It'll give another platform, another opportunity for student athletes, female student athletes, to compete and wear LSU on their jersey. And it's more opportunities for women. And ultimately, I am who I am because somebody did that for me. And that's why we're adding sand volleyball.
Coach Flory thinks interest in volleyball has grown quickly because of the media and expects an even bigger push with the new SEC network starting in the fall.
The popular sports are the sports that have television access or exposure. So, I think women's athletics with the Big Ten network in that area, because they had so much exposure, took off. I think the SEC package is going to do that for the Southeast and certainly for our conference.
When it comes to Title IX, they're doing a great job of getting us more media coverage. We just signed another contract with the SEC for the media coverage, and I think once that exposure comes into play and the media jumps on board with that, and it's kind of sort of equal with the men's, then I think we can move forward. But I do think the media has a lot to do with it because they control our society.
The bottom line is more media exposure for women's athletics will help establish a larger fan base.
The more exposure, without question, I think you will start respecting that sport, that girl athlete more and more.
The television exposure for women's sports have kind of provided an avenue for the entire community, male, female, young, old, to see how athletic women are.
I would have gone from women to men in a hurry if those girls I coaching couldn't play. They could play. They could jump. They could run. When you start looking at the best female athletes in any sport, they're pretty darn good.
However, others aren't as optimistic as Coach Flory and Coach Barmore.
If the LSU women's basketball team went undefeated and went to the Final Four, I'm not sure that the PMAC would be significantly more full than it is now for a women's basketball game. They may draw 3,000, 4,000, and they may go up to 7,000 or 8,000, and that's a significant number. But it's never going to be as full as it would be if LSU men are playing Kentucky and LSU's having a good year. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
But at Louisiana Tech, that was the case for many years. The Lady Techsters drew bigger crowds than the men's basketball team.
The crowds here, people enjoy their women's basketball here.
In 1974, Memorial Gymnasium was home of the Lady Techsters. Coach Barmore explains what took place in Ruston.
We led the nation in attendance with 5,200 fans packed in that old gym. Now, that don't sound like a lot of people now, but it was then. And we would actually play, they quit doing this, we'd play the first game in front of a packed house. The men would come on, and most of them would leave. Both can win. Both can be successful. And at times we have it. And there was room for both.
Success garners better attendance and more media coverage for all women's athletics.
Let's weigh the success that the gymnastics program has had this year and the amount of media coverage that we've had, and I think it's pretty balanced.
And our success from last year, making it to Super 6, that's what brought the fans in this year. And then our success placing third at Nationals this year is going to make for an even better attendance next year.
Coach McMillan thinks the future looks bright for women's sports.
Over the next 10 years, I think what you're going to find is there's going to be more money in women's college athletics than anything else. And I think that's going to continue to create more equality. The more support you have, the more fan base you have, the more money, the more revenues that are brought in, the more that the Nikes and the Adidases and the Under Armours are now wanting to clothe women. I think equality will take care of itself.
Here's something I feel pretty deeply about. Women should quit worrying about men. They're too good, and they play such a sport at a level that I enjoy, that I watch, because I coach it. I know that. We're not going to change some people on the men's side. They're not going to watch women's sports.
It seems as though coaches and athletes have different perspectives when it comes to Title IX, but they all agree that Title IX has had a positive impact on women's athletics. Had it not been for Title IX, Coach McMillan might not have ever finished her senior soccer season and named one of the winningest soccer coaches in the state of Louisiana. Derek Jacobs might not have ever coached a basketball game. Instead, Jacobs was the very student who gave up half of his basketball scholarship and granted McMillan the opportunity to play the game she loved thanks to Title IX.
Neither one of us have ever forgotten that. I knew you gave up a little bit because Derek was a star, so that someone like me who had, a year left could get to live out my collegiate dream.
In a twist of fate, McMillan was hired as the athletic director at Southfield Private School. In 1995, 3 years after she received her Title IX scholarship, she returned the favor by hiring Jacobs as the head girls basketball coach.
And she came to me and said, "Derek, why don't you come coach some basketball?" I'd never coached before in my life, and I coached a couple of teams, fell in love with it, and I did such a good job that when I graduated, I immediately had a job.
And now we get to work together for the next 3 years. And it was just it was a great thing. We're friends today.
In Shreveport, Louisiana, 20 years after the amendment was passed, Title IX brought together two people that impacted each other on and off the playing field. Conversely, Title IX is now blamed for other men's programs, such as wrestling and soccer, being cut in order to comply with the amendment. However, that is not the case.
The biggest injustice is that by providing opportunities for women, many schools are reducing opportunities for men. And that is not the point of Title IX. And that is the challenge of how do you balance that.
There's never going to be a time where women are not complaining that we don't have the same rights. Again, is that right? I think Title IX's equalized things as much as things are going to be equalized, and I think the Title IX situation has been beautiful for women athletics.
Title IX really did for women's sports is that when you have the collegiate programs, it improves all of the levels of sport across the entire age groups.
Women's athletics has truly enhanced athletic programs at all universities.
Title IX has transformed women's athletics and opportunities available for female athletes. But the pioneers and visionaries were the risk takers who stood up and fought for women's sports. Coach Newman never realized how she impacted her tennis players until a couple of weeks ago. Some of her former tennis players came together for the first time in 35 years. This is what she had to say about her experience.
It was really a moving experience. You never know the impact that you have. May not think you're having any at all, but it was something else. That group, they played the sport for their love of the sport.
The love of the sport is what drives athletes and coaches. Hopefully, the passion for women's athletics will ignite the charge for equality for all athletes.
I definitely don't think it's where it should be at 2014. So we've still got a long way to go with that, but I mean, it's headed in the right direction. It's just a matter of how quickly we get it.
The evolution of women's athletics with the passing of Title IX has transformed Louisiana's colleges and universities over the past 42 years. Before the legislation of equality, the athletes appreciated the few opportunities they were given and adjusted and adapt during a time of turmoil. Today's athletes understand the sacrifices made in order to allow them the opportunities today to play the sports they love. Times have changed, and some aspects of sports equality still need to change. But one thing remains the same, for men and for women athletes.
And those things that sports give us are things that money can't buy.